Get in, losers. We're going speculating. Chapter 44, Bee Skull. The night before the Emperor's murder. Gideon wakes up inside Harrow.
Chapter 45, Broken Second House Skull. An amount of time before the Emperor's murder. Abigail's River Heresy. Harrow and Ortis come to terms with their past. G and P.
Chapter 46, Eighth House Skull. Gideon fights the worst bees. Mercy sees Gideon's eyes. Ketharea's got a gun.
Chapter 47, Broken Fifth House Skull. The exorcism begins. The sleeper brings a gun to a knife fight. Ortis clears his throat.
I cannot fucking believe this podcast is worthless, Marie. I'm done. I'm fucking done. I quit today.
Stop. It's a competition. Remember, it is now, you are not competitive. We are collaborative gamers, but it is now competition because remember, what we are hoping is going to happen is that, like, we spend a little bit of time kind of lollygagging with extras between now and Nona, and then we go through Nona, and that by the time we do some lollygagging after Nona, Electo will be ready. And we will switch places. We will let John and Brooke blast ahead and then do a reread and make us stay behind and see if we can fucking figure it out.
And we will destroy their rampant speculations.
Destroy them!
I'm sorry, this week, anyway, legitimately.
Let's go through the
let's do it.
Okay, Dios Apate Major is the BOE and Ninth House operation trying to get God's essence.
Explicitly trying to get the sperm so you can make a baby, so you can pass a blood ward. Every part of that was like ding, da da ding, da da ding, ding, ding.
Okay, fuck you, John. It's fine.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, no, I did write this down. Related to God to get the golden eyes. What I wanted was the Lichter swap. I wanted them to get the swap. They're not getting the swap. It's fine. It's good that they didn't get the swap.
Okay. So you're right. They didn't have that, but they did explicitly say that they thought it was God's eyes. I could not believe that they were actually thinking about eye color, that they caught recessive, which is like very consistently, it's something that Kytherea as Dulcinea says in book 1. It's something that Mercy says here. It's an important clue.
I guess those were my two big ding dings.
There is a third, which is not in the rampant speculation section, but randomly earlier, John's like, how funny would it be if he starts reciting the Noniad and calls the spirit of Nonius? And I was like, I swear to fucking God, John, I will murder you.
Can't wait for this afternoon's text messages where he's like, wait a minute, what the fuck are we doing?
Because he did that as an offhand, and I was literally trying so hard to just like laugh it off. I was like,
wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah, that was, I cannot fucking believe how much they have nailed it. It's ludicrous. I don't think I have the willpower to just even face, thank God John is moving and I'll never have to see him again.
Something that I think is interesting is I wonder, kind of talking, because they picked up on something that bugs us about Wake being tied to the body and moving the body around and also doing things in the river bubble. I was kind of wondering if that's like has something to do with not being able to sense the body sometimes, is like you can't actually sense any type of soul or any type of energy associated with it, because it's so wacky because it's tied to the bubble and Harrow's soul. So if you're trying to
Wake
find
it, you're actually rules.
Yeah, if you're trying to find it, once it's popped into, like, you can sense Kytherea's body when it hasn't been messed with, but once it's been messed with, you can't sense it anymore because you're trying to sense it in like two different places because she's actually tied to Harrow and tied to the body.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're like trying to follow the path of her soul and it basically takes you into the river and then you bounce off a bubble. Like it's just an impossible lead. I also think it's interesting that they mentioned something that is like a pet theory of mine that I'm sure will turn out not to be true, but that Wake is potentially some sort of pre-resurrection something.
Right, recessive.
That there's something there. I think it's remarkable how much power she has in this scene, right? She has managed to enforce her own rules, which include her being essentially immortal, completely untouchable by any weaponry, and the infinite guns that just pop into her hand.
Yeah.
The craziest thing, though, is what she says. She says, I've been doing this for years. The moment I want it to be over, it's all over. And that is a very weird thing for me, that she has been, I understand that she's been dead and a revenant and connected to things for all this time. But this idea of being able to enforce rules, like, what is the context for that? What has she been, that means she hasn't just been literally chilling and twiddling her thumbs in a sword this entire time. Can she exert space on the river?
I think maybe what's been happening is she has, like, basically made her own river bubble. And that's why she's not completely and totally, she's only as insane as she's ever was in life. And that she actually is in some way become what she hated. Like which
is a little bit of a necromancer.
A little bit of a necromancer.
A little bit magic. I love that. I really, really like that idea. And that would definitely explain both the discrepancy between her being able to actually be a functional, soul revenant and also having so much practice and so much power. I adore that.
What if she was a necromancer?
Sorry, I love this too. Self-hatred as a motivator for, like, I think that's completely fascinating and totally reasonable, and also interesting in the context of potentially being a pre-resurrection person. That is, like, necromancy's coming up in the world. Like, maybe more than one person even started it. Or even maybe she was a Nine Houses person who emigrated to BOE and decided to join because she felt like something was fundamentally wrong in the Nine Houses. And that would be interesting too. Okay. The other fun question is, like, why? I understand she hates all necromancers and all lictors, but it's an odd focus on Harrow in particular.
I think it's just the difference between, like, why, like, you don't want to be in a dead body. A dead body that's reanimated with a soul is still a revenant.
Interesting. Okay, so she'd rather, because she says that Harrow will die and she'll take her body, but maybe it's just that Harrow's soul will be displaced. You're saying that potentially she now gets a live body to, like, infiltrate a live lictor body. All right, I buy that. I am okay with that. That sounds great. Those are all my questions about Wake.
I came to the conclusion that Cytherea and Mercy and anybody else who was already kind of working against Jod already suspects that Alecto is the source of his power through a mechanism like the Cav Lictor thing. And they are just doing things because they want proof. And the reason, because it always bugged me that Mercy so immediately got it and that she said Cytherea would have immediately known. And I'm like, how?
Yeah, also, are there just, like, 2 people in this entire universe who have this eye color? Like, is this just not an option otherwise?
like, why would you have already done it? And I realized reading it through again that the reason that she says Cytherea would have known immediately and the reason that Mercy is so quick to get it is because they already suspected, they already know he lied to us.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of a lot, actually, is in the first book, kind of a running theme is them trying to figure out the power source. They're like, the power simply doesn't make sense. Like, it should not be possible to have these tests created. The sheer amount of necromantic power is impossible. And it, like, leads you eventually to this idea that it's literally not possible to have that kind of power unless you are using another soul. And that's how they figure out the lictor process. But it's this same thing here where potentially over the last 10,000 years, Jod's lictors are looking at him and saying, like,
it doesn't make sense.
There still has to be logic behind it. He's not a literal god. We all know that. Like, there is something powering him.
And especially since Augustine was part of this as well. He was part of the Ninth House operation with Mercy. And he's the one who, like, follows energy back to the source. Like, that's his thing, or one of his things, right?
I think you're right. They all suspect. And so then you're sitting there and you're like, here are my data points. We have Alecto with the same colored eyes as this person.
Yeah. The reason that I came to this conclusion was because after she says, I understand librochrome recessive, she says, you are the evidence he lied to us, and you are all the proof I needed. I don't have to breach anything. I don't have to go back.
Yes, because this alone is enough to justify the theory that Alecto was quote, perfect lictorhood.
Yes.
That it was an exchange of powers. I completely agree. Can we talk a little bit about rivery bubble stuff? I like the idea a lot. So we've talked about how Abigail has a moment where she says, that she thinks that the secret chambers of the Emperor run sidelong to the facility rather than, and then she trails off. And it is interesting to me that the only part of all of Canaan House that is truly untouched by Jigglybits is this second house Lictor study. And so I'm wondering if it's legit connected.
If they're legitimately in Canaan House when they step in.
That's right. That's right. That like Harrow's river bubble has a door that opens and you enter the literal Lictor study that is itself kind of a bubble in the river that Jod has put in there. And it made me wonder, honestly, if the first time they went in there, like the bed upstairs, was it covered in Jean Marie's blood from where she got horribly murdered up there? If we went back to Earth and like walked in the door, would you bump into all of the ghosts there? Like how true is each of these connections?
I think you're right because, or at least, although you could still explain it by saying that Harrow saw One Flesh, One and GNP.
Yes.
Previously in Canaan House. Because I was going to say, like, how else would Ortis be reading something?
I don't know that she did see it. I know that Gideon was up there. I'm not sure that Harrow actually ever saw that book. But of course, there's also bleed through. So like it's possible that things that Gideon knows are things that Harrow sort of knows in the back of her mind at this point, because there is some soul exchange there.
Yeah,
and okay, one of the like random details that just like irked me. Right. I am now on board 100% with your theory that all the pipettes and all the pills and shit have to do with IVF. Where are the Dreerberg skeletons coming from?
I mean, that's Harrow.
Yeah, but is it just, why weren't they there before? Is that just like general Harrow stuff? Is that Harrow's 200 souls that were murdered for her stuff?
I think it's just like the bubbles breaking.
Okay, it's just random happenstances. Okay, all right.
Previously, there was none of this stuff. The bubble was perfect. The bubble was just Canaan House. And
yeah.
then
there's bad weather
weird.
From Harrow's brain, and then it gets weird. And now we get, it was just an interesting thing because most of what we were getting was from the invasive soul, and this is something that does read very much as Harrow. But I mean, that may mean nothing.
Going back to like the first things we were talking about of like Wake saying like I could do this all day and like why she's so OP in there and everything like that is like it takes because we'll see this when it's coming up. It takes the ghosts a long time to realize that if you just imagine it hard enough. It's like a lot of this like a magic trope of who's got the stronger willpower.
Yeah. If you can truly believe in this thing that you've constructed, it is just real.
Yeah. And this is like Harrow accidentally believing things are real and Wake accidentally, haunting things. And then deliberately the things that she believes are real, she is stronger in the bubble.
Yeah.
Until the tides turn. But it's kind of like this bleed through back and forth of like how much control do you have over your subconscious, and the skeletons are showing that like Harrow is losing a grip.
Or is taking over more, that like Harrow is now enforcing more of her truth onto it. But either way, okay, I understand this battle. That's good. We talked actually a lot in the episode about the River Beyond heresy. So this is just so funny to me personally because it's so clear that I misinterpreted this for ages, where I consistently have always interpreted the concept of all of these beyond things as beyond the stoma. And now I am fully on board with your interpretation where there's a river with two banks and we're talking about getting across. And additionally, there is a depth and a beyond the stoma. So there are multiple beyonds, but what Abigail is talking about is beyond the river. One of the things that she says is interesting. She says that Jean Marie and Isaac's spirits should have traveled lightly, which does actually suggest that there may be some sort of sin or some equivalent thing that can drag a spirit down, that there's weight that you can carry with you into the river. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it kind of goes with any of the themes of the book and just like also just themes in general of if other than like just kind of like the trauma of their death, if you've lived not very long,
you've not accumulated enough like
emotional
pain or
like emotional
trauma.
Pain or trauma to like really be regretting anything. You just kind of go on,
float across. Yeah, I find it so wild that this is heretical. Like I don't know what that ultimately means, but I am not.
I think it's just
because I was not raised religious.
This is what if you actually had like an actual god emperor, right? Like an actual physical embodiment that this is God. And they say this is what the afterlife is and this is the river. Then any research into something that would potentially say they are not right.
Omniscient and omnipotent. It's
Even
anything
if
that
they
says
haven't claimed to be omniscient or omnipotent. Yeah,
but
that's
it still
heretical.
is. Yeah, that's interesting. No questions. We do not ask questions.
Yeah,
this is the
I mean
mark
that's
a lot of cults.
the problem with cults and religion broadly.
Okay, I have one random thing and then I'm fully done. This is such a dumb piece, but I'm stuck on it. Gideon takes off Harrow's exoskeleton, which presumably has all of the rest of the letters, and then she leaves it behind. And I am dying to know if anything gets salvaged from the Mithraeum. Like, are those letters ever going to come back to us? Or is it just we're out?
We're never going to see those letters.
I want them so bad, Marie.
It's 24 letters.
It's 24, including 2 that Ianthe has, yeah.
And the 2 that Ianthe has to be for Gideon and for...
I think 1 has to be in case of Harrow's death. But I don't know what that says, but I think that's what the 2 are.
Yeah, 1 for Gideon and 1...
I think there's 1 that just says if Harrow dies, and then there's 1 that says if Harrow's eye color changes, and that's when she hands off the letter to Gideon that just has the sunglasses.
She had 1 for Palamedes, she had 1 for Cam, she had 1
She did not have 1 for Palamedes, but she had 1 for Cam, Corona, and Judith, and 1 to herself at the beginning.
So that's only 6 out of the 24. What were the other fucking 18?
I know, I'm dying. Well, okay, so this also, why does Gideon come to the forefront in this moment? Here are possible options. Like, Harrow figures out shit in the bubble and it breaks the whole system. I'm pretty sure that she had 1 letter that said to read in case of your imminent death. And actually the way it's written makes it sound like Harrow maybe wakes up, she knows that she's been stabbed through. So I wonder if she wakes up, sees that she's stabbed through, opens that letter, which has some sort of like cheat code that's like,
and that's maybe, and that's why she walks to her death like a lover, because like she walks into the river.
I like that.
That might actually be what that refers to, is that she actually did open the letter that said, "You're about to die, let Gideon have the body."
Yeah. And somehow manages to get around it. Ah! I want all the letters. I want all the Lichter trials.
We will never get
them. Give me more.
It's so funny rereading these because
I'm so
it's like
greedy.
you notice it a little bit, but you don't notice it that much when you're like speeding through the books. But when you're like really taking your time, you're like, she really does just like the interrupted plot and not enough information and like unreliable. And you're just like, you know what? If you didn't do it so damn well, I
would be so mad at you.
It'd be unforgivable. It would be unforgivable.
Because she is for sure just sitting there giggling to herself about it is the exact Bone Witch and newbie scenario, except Tamsin is the Bone Witch who's sitting there laughing at how little we all really know.
Chapter 48, Third House Skull. That same night before the Emperor's murder, Gideon and Ianthe spar with words. Augustine sees Gideon's eyes.
Chapter 49, Broken Ninth House Skull. How weird is it that a Noniad happened to a guy named Noniad?
Honestly, for once in my life, most of what I have right now is wanting to make fun of them being wrong.
Being wrong, but also, they said some things that like tickled, they were not right, but they tickled my brain. So there's some things that they said that I was like, oh, I have theories because of shit they said where they were wrong. But also things that I think are funny. So let's see. Things I thought that were funny. I liked when Brooke said there's a Venn diagram of people with red hair and yellow eyes. And it was like, sure is.
Sorry, that is actually hilarious.
There's no fucking way you can figure that out.
Because if you actually track it correctly, it's just genetics. Like, it's not even, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I thought that was very fucking funny. And I am extremely excited. I mean, I think John's going to have to be cool tonight and not read, but I am very much looking forward to them figuring out everything that happens in the next chapter. We're going to have to throw him a parade.
Also, I really like him saying, Mercy's going to make it, right? And he just meant like, she's not dead because of the Herald billets, which he is right about that. But he said that, and I was just like giggling to myself. Mercy's gonna make it, right? And I was like,
I also I loved him saying nobody's dead till I see them die on screen. I was like, yes, that's probably a good. Honestly, even when you see them die on screen, that's like still questionable.
And then he said, like, seems like Mercy's gonna have to go kill God. And then they put all of their list of suspects of who's gonna kill God, and Mercy wasn't on it.
No, they did. No. She was still on it, but like it was basically came down to Wake or Mercy with an outside chance on Ianthe, which I thought was a fascinating idea. And in the actual notes in our document, Brooke had picked Mercy and John had picked Wake. So I think that's kind of interesting. I'm impressed. This sounds so dumbery. Like, I'm a little bit ashamed to admit this. Almost every chapter starts with time before the Emperor's murder, and I still managed to forget that he was going to die, and was still like fucking shocked when it happened. I was like, she did not just fucking murder the Emperor. That did not just fucking happen.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
Funny.
Oh man, I actually thought Brooke was kind of like going down a rabbit hole about A initials, which I thought was funny because she still left out a bunch of A initials, including Augustine and Alfred, who are both A's. But this was partially because she thought that Awake was A and then Wake, Commander Wake. But we know that Commander Wake is a shortening of Awake, which is a shortening of the most insane name fucking possible. They have no idea. They're about to get hit with Blood of Eden naming conventions, and there's no way to predict that. That's such a fucking chaotic thing to do, Tamsin. We may have to get them to. I have not picked a game for next time, and it may have to be naming the way we did when Josh and Sonia were on for our guest episode.
One of the things, and I almost fucked up.
I similarly almost said something that we will learn in just a few episodes. I think we probably will do As Yet Unsent, and that's where you learn that Corona would always invite Judith to the party, and Ianthe would always invite whoever Babs was fighting with, because they were talking about whether or not Ianthe like was capable of love and affection, really. And
it just hit me when we're having this discussion that I was like, I think that Ianthe is doing with Harrow what Corona was always doing, which is she wants who she can't have. Like, she doesn't want somebody available.
No, she doesn't. I think this is so consistent. A lot of these characters don't know how to be loved, and they don't know how to handle it. And as a result, they create situations for themselves where they're not going to be loved, they're going to be rejected, or they're like choosing people who are fundamentally bad. Ianthe is not a good person, but she's interesting, and she's still a person,
she's fucking horrible. She's fucking horrible. I think, like, spoiler, I have some people on the hook from TikTok who are some of my favorite people that I think will come for like bonus episodes.
Ooh, fun.
And I just saw like basically, they're not hot takes of like, Ianthe isn't a cartoon villain. She's just a horrible person.
she is just a bad person.
I'm
trying to remember.
She's not a cartoon
in just
villain.
A couple chapters, Gideon says something about like Ianthe every time she has the chance putting her finger on the scales for the like shittier side. Yeah. She like almost can't help herself.
Yeah, she just can't help herself.
It's not a maniacal takeover the world. This is like, which actually is said, I think, by the fact, why did you become a lictor? And the answer is ultimate power and posters of my face. It's like,
which is a flip answer, but also real.
True. Yeah, exactly. One thing that Brooke kind of like harped on was the fact that Wake could do cool backflips, and that was similar to Camilla. But actually, the moment that I think is striking for me, there's this moment where Wake disarms Nonius and then headbutts him. And it's this fascinating callback to both sides of Gideon's duel with Nibirius, where Nibirius disarms her and then she headbutts him. So like it's got Wake both as the brawler and as the brilliant fighter. Yeah. Like all the cards stacked there. It's an interesting moment. And in general, Wake is very interesting. So Brooke noted that Wake distinguishes herself from the other ghosts. And John noticed that Wake seems to have a lot of control over death for someone who's not a necromancer. And I noticed that, there's a couple things that are odd. Like, Wake's voice remains husky and blurred even without the Hasut mouthpiece. I was wondering if that's just because she's, like, partially split between two places at once. But, again, we come back to Wake being a very interesting character who seems bigger than real life and like she has more power. What do you think, Marie?
So the big thing that I noticed from like their kind of theories that like tickled my brain was them pointing out who can do this thing of having a physical presence and then a projection in the river, right? And it's lictors and it's resurrection beasts and it's wake. Normal necromancers can't do this.
Both pieces simultaneously. You're absolutely right. That this is something unique. This idea of being able to exist in these two planes simultaneously. And I don't know what makes that possible.
And so I think that maybe basically Wake, by attaching herself to like so many different people, has turned herself into a resurrection beast the way that Harrow is also a mini resurrection beast.
Interesting. She has all of these things kind of like pulling her, powering her, but also these anchor points, this multiple anchor points.
Like we know that normal necromancers can't really do this thing. Like they can't go fully into the river. They can only visit the bank, right?
Yes.
But lictors can do it because they have a second soul to keep the lights on. So what if Wake basically has multiple, like she has basically pulled souls or pieces of souls onto her?
So that, okay, all of the things that she's connected to, which may even, I mean, think about the resurrection beast that includes all the things that they've destroyed, eaten, killed. How many people, necromancers, has Wake destroyed, eaten, killed kind of energy? So potentially she's got all of these souls, which gives her enough soul stuff that she can fill multiple things simultaneously, that she can literally be inhabiting a body autonomously in the real world.
It may not have had to be things she did before she died. It could just be
even things
Gideon
after.
And Harrow.
That's a great point. No, there's something about Wake that is other level. She's talked about how, you know, this is easy mode. She's been doing this for years, right? Like she understands the river on a pretty fundamental level and definitely has more control over it. I like the idea that she's got an almost lictor-like, closer to an almost resurrection beast-like presence.
But maybe also like what lictors are is kind of a resurrection beast, right? Like
eating a
like,
soul. And yeah, I mean, there's overlap there. That's not nothing.
And so then if what Wake is doing by attaching herself to Harrow, she is giving herself, she's not a necromancer, but she is giving herself access to some things that necromancers can do.
This is interesting. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think that's really fascinating. The other thing, so John brought up this idea that potentially she's a traitor, and that's like why she has so much information. I think it's more likely that the information is just kind of sourcegram-based information that they have. But there is something about Wake that distinguishes her from even other Blood of Eden people. Like there is something else there that I have not totally figured out how to square.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out too, and I had that put out. I was like,
I like this a lot,
maybe come
though.
From the houses, and that is why she has more of this thing of like this anchor point, and she's more like the lictors, and she's more like the resurrection beast or whatever. I don't know that like now that we've kind of talked through this, I don't know if I believe that as much.
No, but there's something there. Unusually for Tamsin. Tamsin loves a cliffhanger at the end of a chapter. And unusually for Tamsin in that chapter, it's like, oh my God, they're all reconciling. Oh shit, Mercy exploded him. Oh shit, he's back. The like roller coaster is so fast that your stomach ends in your mouth and you vomit everywhere. But that's really a story for another day.
Chapter 50, Second House Skull, 30 minutes before the Emperor's murder. Gideon, original flavor, shoots Commander Wake Me Up inside. Gideon, the second, as in the second to be named that, not from the second house, because Gideon original flavor is from the second house, meets her dad. Chapter 51, Eighth House Skull. No one had to die. God asks for mercy. Mercy murders God.
Do we start off with them being insane?
Start with them. That was the best single example we've ever had of them being dangerously dead on and then spiraling off into infinity.
And I love that Brooke's still like, who's the body in the tomb? I'm like, you fucking got told who the body in the tomb is. It's fine.
Sorry, I think that's very funny. They're like, who is the body who's haunting? And we're like, I feel like that one's known, right? Do we not know that? I feel like we know that.
Yeah, I feel like we know that. Okay, can I just put like my little tick, 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 tick?
Do it.
Of being like, yup, fuck you, John.
That was amazing. I thought that was a great call and completely accurate.
Fuck you, John.
Yep, there you go.
Fuck you, Brooke.
Right, I think it's a reasonable.
And then finally, something that I think is hilarious is John being like, there's something going on with the sunglasses. There's a reason that Gideon put on the sunglasses. And Brooke was like, no, it's just vibes.
Yes, that was fucking amazing. Every single part of that was so fucking funny. Like, there's something very funny about them being his glasses originally, but I love that John explicitly said that the only reason to do that would be to hide your eyes. And although he didn't say it out loud, in his notes here in the outline, he specifically wrote, Pyrrha not totally dead ? And I was like, fucking dead on. That was beautiful.
Yep. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, I thought that was so funny. I do love them. I loved John getting up and pacing and spiraling off into like necromantic theory of how big a soul is.
On the audio too, of him like going in and out. I'm like, I think you can tell that he's pacing.
Oh my God, so funny.
He already said WTF, so does that mean that he already got back?
John must have come back already. Honestly, okay, so I ended, I left us off before the game as, well, God's dead, so I guess it's time for a game. And my plan is to next week leave it as, well, God's not dead, so I guess it's time for a game. Oh, man. That was a very funny rampant speculation. I enjoyed that thoroughly. All right, should we talk about our shit?
Yeah.
So Wake is pretty explicit here, says, so Mercy's like, where the fuck were you all this time? Wake says, in my bones, then a blade. And I still love the idea that we talked about, I think literally in our very first episode, that she might have been in Gideon and might inform some of Gideon's thought processes and like weird, anachronistic takes. But you have a response here.
Well, so I think now I'm in the position that she never actually was in Gideon the way that she was for Harrow, but I think it's so indicative that the moment that Gideon gets this blade, she carries it around and she loves it. She says she loves it so much she could friggin' marry it. Like, she adores the blade. And there's this weird thing of, like, Wake purposefully doesn't kill her. Like, she should have no sentimental attachment to her child. That was the bomb. But she literally grew up with her child. Here's another one from John, motherfucker. Oh. I don't know what these are in response to. I'm going to need context later.
Yeah, no, I think that's really fascinating. I think there is so much bleed through. It's just very, very interesting. And we talked last time about how interesting Wake is as a character, how much control she has in that kind of river bubbly space, almost as though she's managed to kind of create those for herself. And we get a lot that's interesting here. So our newbies reference the fact that Wake actually knows Jod's name.
Yeah. So it's like, it's beyond propaganda. Like, if you can actually stamp out information and erase people's memories so that your truth is the truth, you have ultimate power.
So I think you're completely right that this thing of what's the difference was in response to Anastasia. And I think you have a note here, and I think you're completely right. Anastasia did do it perfectly. I think Anastasia fully had it. And I don't think she panicked at all. And I don't know why she ended up following him in the end, but maybe she...
Another from John. What the fuck? I'm going to need timestamps and be like, what were each of these for, John? I need annotations.
You can't just say WTF over and over and over.
Anyway, sorry, where were we?
Yeah. No, tell me a little bit about the stuff that you're writing down here about Anastasia.
Maybe I can just read it. I said, I think that it confirms that Anastasia was doing it perfectly and he interrupted it. And then he either gaslit her into thinking that she was wrong or that he had something else to hold over her to use as collateral. Okay, here we go. Finally, here we have some context from John after a WTF, motherfucker, what the fuck, which are each 3 minutes apart. Then we finally have Just a Hannah and I. My name is Para DeVay, said the ghost in question, commander of the second house, head of Trenton Special Intelligence, cavalier to a dead lictor. This is a gladiator reference.
Oh, man. Some things are important, and they are...
They are the means.
No, I think it's an interesting thing. I wonder... you know, I don't think you can ever forgive Jod for murdering Samael if you're Anastasia.
No. And I think it's so interesting because all of them hate him and yet they adore him. Like, they are so tightly held to him. And so I think that, like, the fact that he is such a piece of shit, but still everybody is held so tightly to him explains so much of what happens. So I think that Cassie knew almost everything almost from the beginning. And she told Anastasia. And Anastasia somehow had a long game. And from there on, all of the other lictors start figuring things out. But he is, like, Jod is so toxic and they are all so fucked up and won't trust each other, won't work with each other. They don't have, like, a common cause, so they're not actually working together. And so they're all separately screwing each other over and trying to get back at Jod, or, like, trying to do their own things, but also, like, technically on his team or whatever. And, like, still trying to be his favorite. Like, there's this line where he says, were you just pretending to hate each other this whole time, to Augustine and Mercy? And they both just go, no.
They're like, no, we fucking hate each other. We just also would team up for this purpose. Yeah, you're totally right. And I, like, for me, it's just such a classic indicator of a deeply abusive relationship, because you know it's wrong, and you also want them to love you, man. You desperately, desperately want to be cared for by this person who's constantly, like, punishing you, and you gaslight yourself into believing that if you're good enough this time, it'll work.
Yeah, if it's good enough this time, yeah, everything will work out and everybody else will have been wrong, and that you and this person with power over you are going to, like, everything's going to be fine this time.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I mean, like, even in these chapters, Augustine has this moment where he says, come clean and be the man I want you to be. Like, he wants Jod to be that person. And he also knows in his heart that it's not going to happen. John brought up a bunch about, like, Alecto's mythology.
She is the Fury tasked with punishing mortals for sins against other mortals.
Yes. And she's also, like, a fascinating birth story. It's not just that she's born from Uranus and Gaia. It's, so the first, like, 3 generations of gods in Greek and Roman mythology are all, like, killing your father so that you can take power.
Yep.
And so Kronos castrates Uranus, and where his blood falls on Earth, that forms the Furies and some other things. So it's also this, like, I don't know, there's something about this, like, death of a father thing that it makes sense in the context of this world where I feel like people are trying to come up against Jod, who clearly has tried to, like, overthrow the power structure that existed. Yeah, and this, like, wild fury and anger and vengeance is really fascinating. I also think that these different names are interesting. I don't know what she calls herself.
I think it's really interesting that Mercy was the one who was so upset about anybody knowing her name. And the lictors have done so much to erase their names from the houses, right? Like, names are sacred.
Yes.
But Jod was the one being like, you can't withhold your name from, like, Harrow. Like, it's her, like, rightful, like, from Harrow and Ianthe. It's, like, it's their rightful thing. Like, they are your equals now. But at the same time, like, this is the first time he gets really upset about a name. And he doesn't want to hear the name Alecto. And I'm like, who named her Alecto? Like, how did she get that name? Who named her? And why does that name upset you? And why would you rather call her A.L.? And is the A.L. literally just a nickname? Or is there another piece to it that we don't have?
Yeah. One of the things that I feel like we haven't talked about a lot, because it doesn't come up necessarily a lot, Jod's overwhelming misogyny with respect to A.L. is fascinating, right? Like, the 2 names that he likes to call her are both these, like, diminutizations where it's, again, we have talked about this, you know, super sexy Annie Laurie, and then you have Annabelle Lee, small child who loved me dearly and I was her whole world. Like, it's just kind of it's both about ownership, but it's a gendered ownership in a way that I feel very uncomfortable with.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
You know what's not gross? Pyrrha. Great transition.
I love it. Like, from the very beginning, we have so many, like, little tells that it's Pyrrha when you know to look for it. So, like, when she walks in, there's the gun on the hip, and you're like, that's not something Gideon would do. He doesn't shoot guns. The only person we know of who cares about guns is Blood of Eden and Pyrrha.
And Pyrrha. Although also, so low-key, where did she get the gun? This implies that she's had a gun on the Mithraeum the entire time, which I love. I don't know why I love that, but like Pyrrha loves her guns.
I feel like she's either hid it from Gideon, or he has like keeps finding it and like thinking to himself like it's a keepsake of her, to remind himself of her,
yes,
and
I could
doesn't
see
think too
both
much
of
about the
those.
fact that it's not a museum piece, that it's actually being actively used.
You're like, wow, it was so recently cleaned. Look how well kept this is. Yeah. And I also really love, so you're absolutely right. She's got the gun. They specifically say the dark eyes. We've got the stealing the aviators. I really think that Pyrrha is the only one who smokes, that Gideon does not smoke.
I don't think Gideon smokes. I think it's only Pyrrha. Because
Yeah.
Augustine is like, would you like a cigarette? She's like, I'd kill for one.
Kill for one.
And also, like, very, very, like, carefully, like, not saying very many things. Like, one-word answers, like, very few things. Like,
Yes.
trying really hard to, like,
to emulate Gideon.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, so, I mean, I think the easiest explanation for why she walks up and immediately shoots Wake is just that she doesn't want to reveal the Pyrrha-Gideon dichotomy, and that that will sort of be revealed if the nature of their full relationship comes out. But I still think it's an interesting choice. God says a weird thing here. It says, you could have told me, and Pyrrha says, I didn't know to. And it's possible you could do like I didn't know whether you'd accept me, but there's a part of me that's like, how much did Pyrrha explicitly know? Like, did only Gideon know that Wake was pregnant? Like, and this is sort of like found memories floating up, or is this like...
But see, I think they're like that weird pause of, I thought the baby was mine.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't Pyrrha's.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, was from semen from a body that I've been using.
Yeah, I thought it was mine.
Yeah.
I just think it's like such a funny,
one.
like weird little pause. And you can read that pause so many ways, but then when you know that it's Pyrrha talking, you're like, oh, that's funny.
That is funny.
I don't know, because we also still don't know why Pyrrha was messing around with her before Gideon started. Like, Gideon started messing around with Wake 2 years ago. We don't know how long Pyrrha was messing around with her.
We know that Pyrrha is deeply attracted to people who are like almost zealots, people who like would die for their belief.
Pause.
Yeah. Some weird shit.
Oh, there's one more thing that I think is really interesting, which is we kind of forget that Ianthe is watching this entire scene.
I'm glad you brought this back. Yeah.
So she knows what a piece of shit Jod has always been. She watches him be shady and a piece of shit. She watches him be terrifyingly powerful. And we get that line at the very end from Gideon about there's Ianthe putting her finger on the scale marked bad.
Yeah. It's a very, very interesting thing. Part of it to me reads as like, what would Ianthe do with absolute power? Like, she's down to gaslight people. She's down to lie to people. I don't know that she would do any differently than Jod. But I think the more important thing is that Ianthe collects all the information. Like, and she keeps her cards close to her chest, and she collects all of the information. So she's making these very, very tightly regulated strategic moves based on everything. And it's not based on morality, right? It's not it is based on how to achieve the end she's trying to achieve. She is a tactician at her heart.
I think it'll also be really interesting to see the tonal shift with our newbies, with Nona. They're going to be like smacked upside the head again. They're going to be like, what the fuck are we doing? We're going to be like, yet again, just wait. I feel like that is how, like, the pacing and the tone of every single one of these books is so different, but also it's exactly the same, which is nothing happens for 75% of the book.
And then it happens so fast that you can't even keep up, and you're basically just texting us, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck, every 3 minutes.
Yes.
John.
Yeah.
Chapter 52 is a fifth house skull. Moments after the Emperor's murder. God's not dead. Augustine takes it to the river. Pyrrha in Gideon's body. Ianthe chooses bad. Gideon Nav dies again.
Chapter 53, Broken Ninth House Skull. Half an hour ago, Dulcie shares her secret. Harrow saves the last dance.
Epilogue, 6th House Skull, 6 months after the Emperor's murder. The heat of the city. Have you worked out who I am? Not yet, said Camilla.
All right, they're brilliant. They're thinking about all sorts of interesting things. However, they did not nail anything this time, and I'm so grateful for that. I
feel
after
like
the end of last book, I mean, some of it was stuff that they had said last episode. So that Electo is the missing resurrection beast, I think is the biggest thing that they know.
That's the one thing they've nailed. But that isn't new.
Yeah, I'm just grateful. They hit a lot of interesting points, but I was getting tired of throwing parties for people. God, we should throw parties for us next season. Do you want to go through our stuff, or do you want to talk about the specifics of what they said?
No, we're going to do a lot of recaps. So let's go into our reckless speculation, because basically you put a couple things in here and then I annotated.
I love, actually, I just saw this and I'm loving it. It's okay. So this first one I think is an insane nonsense, but you know that Tamsin loves a throwaway. And there's a weird way that she describes Jod's body knitting itself back together. She describes it as a construct. And I had a moment where I was like, oh my God, how certain are we that the Jod we've been interacting with is a live human person? Is it possible that this is a puppeted Jod from, some other Mithraeum, millions of light years away? And I don't think that's the case, but I do think it's insane.
Yeah, no, and my notes literally say, holy cow, because I was never picked up on that. That's bizarre and weird and fascinating. And also, I'm kind of with you on this too, where I don't think so. I think that he's a construct in the way that all of the lictors are constructs.
Inherently, because of the eightfold word, they have made themselves constructs. I'm there for that. And I also, in terms of God being immortal, I think that you would need to kill both Electo and Jod in order to get rid of...
That if you had a perfect lictorhood, it would be the same damn thing. You would be invincible if you had perfect lictorhood, because you would have to kill both at the same time.
Simultaneously. Exactly. Or you'd have to find out some necromantic way of splitting them, of undoing the eightfold word.
Also, Nona was hard for me, at the beginning, and then it became, quickly, it is one of... I think Harrow is still, I think we've had this conversation, I think Harrow is still my favorite, but Nona is the one that, makes me feel the most.
So for me, the way that, if I was going to really loosely characterize them, Gideon is about plot, Harrow is about character, and Nona is about world. But one of the things that makes it really fun is that in a soul melange kind of way, they all have aspects of each. There's a lot that you learn about world and character in Gideon. There's actually there's plot going on, but it's behind the scenes. In Harrow and Nona, it's this but little bits of it creep in.
I guess I'm just thinking about the fact that if I had to read Nona a couple of chapters at a time over 6 months, I would be pissed.
God, I can't wait. I'm so relieved, so happy. I'm having the best time. Oh my God, this is going to be so fabulous.